There's just something really, really special about handwritten and hand-typed notes, and this is what I want to talk about today because it's something that I do every day. I try and write by hand every day, and I have a typewriter which I use most mornings when I come to the studio. This is my art studio, by the way. Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful practice to get involved in, and I think doing it as part of a daily routine has been, in my experience, really, really transformative. There's something really special about slowing down in today's age. There's something really special about the tactile nature of a piece of paper or holding a pen or pencil and actually, writing, physically writing, The tactility even of my typewriter, it's still got keys, but the keys hit a band of a ribbon of ink, and that then impresses itself on the paper, and there's something really special about that. This sort of tactility, I feel, is slowly being lost in today's society and the world in which we live in. More importantly, I think there's just a real human element to handwritten notes and even hand-typed notes, and I do love sending them to people. I love receiving them in the post, and it's really nice for me just to look back on them and think about like how much I've changed, how far I've come, what is different about my life now compared to before. And I find, right, that the most beautiful thing about handwritten notes and hand-typed things, whether it's on my typewriter or letters that I've written and received, is that they have this very special way of transporting us back to the exact moment when either we received them or when we wrote them. And I find the same sort of effect happening when I look through my old sketchbooks as well. And that is totally different to scrolling through my Instagram feed, So my Instagram is effectively a digital sketchbook, isn't it? It's a collection of images that I've curated on a page, and it's got some of my writing on there as well. But it doesn't have that same sort of memory inspiring connection. It's if you've never experienced it, I really would highly recommend that you do, because you'll look back in a few years and you think, wow, like I have this sort of very soft and gentle pathway to the past, which is just really beautiful, and it's something that a lot of people unfortunately don't engage in these days. It's the same with my photographs. I used to take loads of photographs on a film camera, and some of those photographs now are 10, 15 years old. But whenever I see them, I know where I was and I know what I was doing, and oftentimes I'm still like able to experience the kind of the smells and the energy feeling in me, of when I was like living abroad, in Hong Kong, or when I was in Poland, or any of these places that perhaps I'll touch on in future videos. So yeah, I was really inspired to make this video because I was just looking through one of my sketchbooks this morning, and I just had that experience, of like, it just transports you back. And I think, really, like, there's a healthy way to live in the past, and there's an unhealthy way to live in the past, and really, I think, like, for me, in my experience, like, a healthy way for me to live in the past is like to keep these sort of things, because it allows me to return to the past and, really see where I've come from. But it doesn't mean that I'm obsessing over it, all the time. And, when I'm at my worst and I'm obsessing over the past, like, it's in a very unhealthy way, and it often doesn't involve sketchbooks and things like that. It involves my own mind working against me, which is, always a work in progress. So yeah, for me, like, handwriting feels incredibly sacred. It's a very old practice, isn't it? It's something, not that we've not always done it, but it's been part of our existence for, thousands and thousands of years now. And as a way of capturing ideas, it's pretty incredible if you think about it, thinking about what language actually is and what letters actually are, you know, symbols that represent things that we collectively think about in the same way. That in itself is a form of magic, in my opinion. And it feels sacred to me. There's something very special about holding a pen or a pencil in one's hand and having a piece of actual paper in front of, you know, yourself, and actually thinking about, for me, I feel a bit like a conductor, not like an orchestra conductor, but like a electrical conductor when I'm writing or when I'm painting or when I'm typing at my typewriter. Because it seems like I'm receiving things from elsewhere, somewhere else, you know, and I am just the vehicle which those little bits of cosmic beauty pass through, you know, and I can then express them with my paint through my hand, or with my hand on a pen and paper, you know. That is really sacred to me, you know, truthfully. You know, and I think, yeah, writing by hand does reveal something deeper. As part of my own recovery journey, I write a lot about who I am, where I've come from, what things I used to do and what behaviours I used to have and how that's changed. And there's something really freeing about writing. I think if you really sit down with the intention of writing things truthfully, it's very hard to lie, because it's such a private and personal act. If you're making that time to sit down and write about these deep and oftentimes troubling experiences, what's the point of lying, you know? It seems kind of futile, really, because you're doing it for yourself, and you yourself are doing it for yourself. And I think, like, that has revealed a lot of deep truths about me that I know have helped me so much on my own journey of in recovery, but also general growth. And I think, you know, we lose something in speed and convenience when we're handwriting, but I don't necessarily think that everything is supposed to be about speed and convenience. I think, you know, taking food as perhaps an example, just off the top of my head, you know, we go to fast food for speed and convenience, but not often we go for, you know, a really special family occasion, and where we might sit down for a few hours and really appreciate each other's company. And I think you can transfer that analogy quite nicely across to, you know, the kind of slowness and intention that handwriting or hand typing brings to a situation. At least in my experience, that's the case anyway. And it's not always easy, but again, there are a few daily practices that I think are really, really beneficial, or have been beneficial for me. And, you know, it's no surprise that a lot of people talk about writing and journaling and these, you know, handwritten practices as being transformative, as I mentioned before. And maybe some things just aren't meant to be efficient, you know. I think this is what I would like to close on. I think, unfortunately, the world we live in, it does kind of pressurize us into being quick and instantaneous, and, you know, doing things at a speed that perhaps isn't appropriate for what it is that we're actually doing. And I think there are a few sacred spaces, sacred places and sacred activities where slowness and stillness and intentionality, particularly with like writing as this most prevalent example in this video, are really important. You know, I've got a friend, a mentor of mine, and he's an artist, and he always says to me, you know, if you're going to do some writing, make sure you really pamper yourself. You know, sit down, make a nice cup of tea or coffee, find a very comfortable space, somewhere quiet where you're going to be able to work uninterrupted. You know, and even if it's in a cafe, you find your own little space, and you can make that space sacred for a few moments and a few hours. And there's something really important about being intentional with our time and these sacred acts. And yeah, my one takeaway from this video for anyone who's watching would be, perhaps if you don't have a writing practice in your life, give it a go and see what happens. And as always, if anyone has found anything useful in that, leave a comment and let me know. If you've got any questions, let me know. I love to have chats, these deeper kind of chats that I end up having on YouTube. And moving forwards, yeah, give it a subscribe if you're interested, and I'm going to keep going with these kind of videos, so thank you.